For a long time I was struggling with this tiny issue in a font renderer. The text, especially in smaller font sizes, looked completely rubbish. I mitigated this bug for some time using tricks, such as having text only on a very dark background or using bigger font sizes. But the time has come when I finally snapped and decided not to do anything else until this annoying issue is solved. It took me a couple of hours to get to the bottom of this, but finally I found the cause of my headache, and this video will explain everything that was going on. To give you a bit of a context, in my game engine I have a custom sprite font renderer. I'm using a library called FreeType to convert fonts from vector format into bitmap. So each letter is just a bunch of pixels I can render on screen. Overall, font rasterization and rendering is quite broad topic, with many caveats and details to know about, and before development of this game, I had almost no experience with this topic, so I quickly typed a bunch of code that seemed to work alright and moved to more interesting topics, like for example making rest of the game. At first, I didn't notice any issues with rendering, as I was testing using large font sizes on a dark background. But when I began to implement actual features for the engine, like my sprite tool, I started to notice issues. When the light colored text was written on top of a grey background, it looked poorly. This issue wasn't so prevalent on darker backgrounds. I looked into the code and quickly noticed the first issue. When FreeType rasterizes a font glyph, which can be for example a letter, it produces a bitmap where each of the pixels takes 1 byte or value from 0 to 255. This value represents an alpha channel, which simply tells how visible is given pixel. 0 is totally transparent and 255 totally opaque. Now, when generating a final sprite font texture with all the letters, each pixel takes 4 bytes. 3 are for RGB channels and the 4th is for alpha. All RGB channels set to 255 give white color and the 0 black color. What I was doing, I was assigning the value returned from FreeType to all 4 channels of the final texture. While what I should be doing is to set the RGB channels to maximal value and only differentiate alpha channels. What I was obtaining was a texture where glyphs were in different shades of gray. Setting letters to white color has this feature that it's easy to later colorize these letters. This is because each channel can also be represented not as an integer but a real number in the range from 0 to 1. Then, if white color is 1 and we want to make red colored letters, we simply multiply all channels by themselves, and we receive red-colored letters with alpha values from the original source. This change did improve the look of the text but didn't solve the issue completely. But at this time I thought to myself that I'm probably not going to use so small letters in the game itself, and given that, as I already mentioned, I don't know too much about text rendering, I assumed that maybe my approach is fundamentally flawed, and after digging a little more I waved away this issue. Moving forward a few months, I was working on some other features of the engine. I tried to use yellow colored letters to display a warning in the editor, and again this issue made an appearance. This time I didn't want to make adjustments, only to make it less visible, and decided to solve it properly once and for all. I started digging through FreeType's documentation, and the first thing I came across was something called gamma correction. I'm still not an expert on this, but the issue goes as follows. Even though, logically, some pixel on texture has, for example, half of the max value, it does not mean that it will have half of the max possible brightness for the human looking at screen. Human eye is not linear in this regard, so some adjustments to data should be made to make text look better on the actual screen. Using a formula I found online, I applied gamma correction to the generated glyphs, and again, the result was a tiny bit better, but weird glitches were still clearly visible. Next, I tried to identify which part of the process was causing issues, so I took a single glyph generated by FreeType and saved it to the hard drive. Inspecting in graphical editor didn't unveil any issues. That indicated that the bug was making an appearance later in the process, when all glyphs were rendered into a single sprite font texture. Inspecting glyphs closer revealed this strange pattern. Where pixels should become less visible, they were getting more and more dark, which finally pointed me in the right direction. Look, when rendering textures, you can do this in different blend modes. Blend mode decides how the source texture is mixed with anything it's being rendered onto. No blending means that each pixel from the source is copied without any change to the target texture. On the other hand, alpha blending produces an effect where one texture can be partially transparent on top of another. Alpha blending is the default setting for SDL, the library I'm using for rendering, among other things. Let's plug some values in those equations. If we have some pixel which is totally white and its alpha is equal to 0.5 and the target texture I had was fully black with alpha equal 0, in result we get some value which is a shade of gray. So at this point, the fix to the issue was obvious. It was only a matter of changing blend mode to none, so the glyphs are copied into sprite font exactly how they were generated by FreeType. And that's how I managed to finally fix a bug which was lurking in the codebase for so long. That's all for today's video. Check out Pumpkin Man on Steam if you haven't already. It's 30% off during the Steam Screamfest. The promotion ends on November 4th. Subscribe for more and leave a comment if you have any questions. Have a nice day.